Hi, I'm Allison. I'm a literacy specialist and the author of the blog Learning at the Primary Pond. And this week I did a free webinar, had so much fun Sunday, Monday night with you all. And in that webinar, I talked about guided reading questions that I get asked frequently, and I shared some little strategies and tips and basically just my answers to those questions. And so on those webinars, I promised you that I would do a little show and tell. And what that show and tell is going to be is I'm going to show you my binders, and so you can actually see how I stay organized for guided reading. And the reason why I feel it's so important to stay organized for guided reading is not just organization for organization's sake. I am a very organized person and I love to be organized, but this is more about planning smarter, right? So having somewhere to go so that you're not constantly reinventing the wheel, forgetting where your materials are, doing the same thing over and over again in your groups. There's a lot of reasons why it's really helpful to stay organized for guided reading, and the number one is just that it saves you time. So that's what we're going to be chatting about tonight. And I'll also show you my new interactive guided reading mats and how to use those as well. At the very end, I'm going to be doing an Amazon gift card giveaway, so make sure you stick around for that because that'll be at the end in case you want to, buy binders or tabs or really anything else your heart desires. I will be picking a winner at the end. So if you're joining me now, number one, let me know if you can hear me okay, because I'm doing this with my headphones, trying this out. And also number two, let me know what grade you teach. Always like to know what grade levels I am or who's teaching. I always like to know the grade levels of who I'm chatting with. All right, so let me know that in the comments. And then I think we're just gonna dive in with my binder system. And we're not gonna talk about the content that I covered in my webinars, but I do wanna just briefly review how my little organization system works. Kristen says started her binders this week. Yay, so exciting. Hey, Stacy, thanks so much for letting me know that you can hear me. And then also let me know what grade y'all teach. Okay, so binder number one is just my weekly plans. And it's really nothing fancy. I don't have them labeled right now, but I'll just have a tab for each group. And inside that tab, let's hope I have this set up correctly. Inside that tab, I will have my lesson plans. So in my guided reading bundles, which those are linked up there in this post, you get blank lesson plan templates, but there's also complete lesson plans. So I do some of both, right? Like I use the plans I've already created, again coming back to not reinventing the wheel, but I also sometimes am planning new stuff or writing on those lessons. So those are in there for the week for the group. And then behind there, I actually made a mistake and I don't think I have any in here. No, I do. Behind that, I have, for each group, I have blank running record forms. So the way that I use these, as I explained in the webinar, is I will take a running record of one student from each group each day. And that doesn't mean that I'm having them read an entire book, because when you get up into like first grade, second grade, and higher, an entire book can take a really long time to get through. So that might just be 100 words, but I want to see how they're doing, what strategies they're using, what phonics things might be tripping them up. And so that's why I keep a bunch of blank running records in here, huge time saver. And so when it's time to take the running record, I just do it, and then it actually lives in my binder. And then on Thursday, or whenever I'm planning for the following week, I'll look at those running records, I'll score the accuracy, and I'll take a look at like, what do we need to work on for the following week? So that's in my binder: plans, blank running records, and then completed running records. And then I'll also keep these little checklists here. So I don't know how well you can see these, but they are checklists that are specific to the guided reading level. And these are included in my bundles. I also have them separately. Everything's in that link. But the reason why I have these is because for the longest time, I'd be so committed to taking notes about how my kids were doing and what I was noticing. And aside from the running record, that wasn't happening. And the reason for that was not because I was slacking off. It was because I was genuinely engaged with the kids during guided reading and coaching them. And that's what we want to be doing, right? Like, we're not just there to assess, we're there to coach them and help them just discover all the reading powers that they already have, right? That's our role. And so if we're taking tons of time to write stuff down, that can distract us from what we're doing with our kids. So my solution to that, as opposed to just not having any notes, was to create these checklists. So now they're actually, so I have them in a checklist form where you can just like check, check, check. But I also have a rubric form because that's kind of nice too. So you can see like, for example, this is level B, makes simple inferences from pictures. Are they doing not so good, doing okay, or doing great? I kind of like the rubric form just because it gives me a little bit more information for my planning as opposed to just check or not check, but I have these as a checklist too. So that's where these came from. And so I just keep a bunch of them at the levels that my kids are at in my daily binder. And so this stays, so in the classroom, this stays with me at the guided reading table, ideally. So it's just there and I can pick it up and use it immediately. But this is my weekly or my daily binder. Let's see who's here. Hey, Kristen, second grade teacher. Hey, Christine and Joe, got a first grade teacher. Elda, kindergarten teacher. April, welcome. Addison. Stacy, checklists are so handy. Yes, totally agree. Heidi says, love using my checklist. Yes, I feel so much better because I'm not like, I feel like I can still coach my kids, but actually get data and not be looking at my plans later and being like, okay, I wrote down absolutely nothing. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll remember that this happened. And then it just totally, it just totally bypasses me when I'm planning. So we all have so much going on and it's just nice to be able to check, check, check. Makes for easy, fast assessment during guided reading. Okay, so this was like my day-to-day binder, and now I want to show you my big binders. And mine are a little bit heavy. The reason why mine are heavy is because I work with kids at a variety of levels as a reading specialist, and I was determined not to have like 400 binders. In retrospect, I might have broken it up more because this is a little heavy and I have bird arms if you haven't noticed. So I might put fewer levels in here if I were just making my binders, but that's totally up to you. And it also depends on what you put in them. But basically, I have my weekly binder that I just showed you, and that's just for plans, just for informing my planning for next week. This is where all my masters go. And this is what I was talking about with feeling like I was reinventing the wheel, doing things over and over again, trying to pull things from various places. And I just wanted basically a bank of activities that were leveled so I could say, okay, this group is level D. This is what we're working on in phonics. This is what we're working on for comprehension, and just have a place to go to grab everything, right? And so this is what I created. That's what this place is. And I'll show you what my tabs are. This stuff is from my guided reading bundles, but of course you can put your own stuff in here too. It's a little bit hard to hold up, but I have one, let's see if I can hold this. I have one section that will have, it'll have the assessment. So like this is the master copy of the rubric that I was showing you, and it'll have any leveled books. And these, what I actually like to do, and I think I have it in some different tabs, is just keep not the book in book form, but the book for copying purposes like this. This is actually the way that I prefer to keep these books because then I can just go to the copier and remake them. Whereas if you staple them together, for whatever reason I had done that with a couple of them, then you can't really copy it. But I like to keep it like I showed you, just one page for copying. So books go in there, assessments go in there, and then I also have behind that, I have the actual lesson plan. So these are the lesson plans from the guided reading bundles. And if you're using these, know that you don't have to get through everything and you can also adapt, write on them, make them your own. But I like having these for a reference because, if I'm starting with a group and I'm like, okay, we're at level I, like what should that lesson sound like? Like I have something to go on, and then I just adapt it to my individual kids' needs, and we go from there. All right, so that's tab one. Tab one is the assessments. I think I also have the running records for the books in there because in my bundles I have the running records with the words on them, the actual books, and then the lesson plan. So it's like assessments, lessons, books goes in that one tab. The next tab has decoding and fluency stuff. And so that might be something like this, where the kids, and normally I have it in like a whole sheet, I just must have cut this out. The kids sometimes will have these in front of them. I have a lot of different decoding visuals in my guided reading bundles because I like for my kids to have something visual to connect with. Then I also have, let's see, it kind of depends on the level. So I have different stuff for like level I than I would for level K and J, but I might have teaching points like what am I going to work on at that level. Anything that has to do with decoding and fluency will go in that one particular tab. Next up, I have a tab for comprehension and vocabulary. And again, I'm trying to pull this up so you can see it. I have a list of teaching points because working with so many levels, sometimes I'm like, okay, like what are the nuances here? Like what should I be working on with level I? And so because I have those teaching points, I can just go to it and be like, okay, like this is something, for example, describe how a character changes over time. That might be something that pops up in some level I books. Or if it's nonfiction, could be like describe text features and how they help the reader. So it's just something to go off of for planning my lessons. This binder is what I use for planning my lessons. So that was tab 3. And then tab 4 is like my word study tab. And there's all kinds of stuff in here. There are like games. This is a vowel teams thing. It's probably a little bit hard to see, but the vowel teams are written here. The kids spin it and then they have to come up with a word or look off of a list that has that vowel team and then they write it. So word work, just a fun little spin on that. I have some word sorts. I have just basically any kind of word work activities that are appropriate for that level. And the nice thing once you have these assembled is that you're then just not doing the same things over and over again at every level. So like that was level I, but if I look at a different level, I have different activities for the kids to do. And some of them are real simple, but some of them are games, some of them are sorts, but it's all leveled in the bundles anyway, so that you don't have to worry about finding new stuff for every single level that you're working with. So that's my binder. I apologize, it's a little bit hard to hold up, but I have those 4 tabs and I have them for every single level. And having this is extremely helpful to go to the copier, to make your lesson plans. And then once you make these, like, yes, it takes a little bit of time to set up, but once you have them forever, right? Like these are not the copies that you're using with your kids. You use these masters to make copies from. Maybe you make little sets of cards and those live in a plastic baggie somewhere else. But this is where you go to plan, and it just makes planning so much faster. So that's my binder system. I call it a 2 binder system, but it's really simple. It's just the weekly binder and then the master binder. So those are those 2. Let me know if you have any questions about the binders. I am going to move on to the interactive guided reading mats. And again, the stuff in the binders, that can be found at that link that I stuck up there. Because I did a webinar, I'm doing a sale on those guided reading materials. And so everything's 20% off through next Monday, which I believe is the 16th. Andrea says, can you please come to my school? Where do you live, Andrea? Hey, David, Sue, welcome. April and Amy, awesome. Kinder Spanish immersion. So great to have you all. Okay, so Stacy says, are your levels the same as Canada's? So Stacy, if you use the Fountas and Pinnell guided reading levels, then yes. I know that sometimes different countries use different leveling systems, excuse me, but they should be the same as long as you're using like the Fountas and Pinnell guided reading levels. All right, so those are the bundles. That's what I've been using for years, such a time saver. What I want to show you now is something that I developed within the last like 6 months to a year. And as you can tell from me barely being able to lift the binders, there's a lot of stuff in there. So I did feel well equipped to teach guided reading, and I was saving myself time and all that jazz. But I still felt like something was missing. Even after creating these bundles that I was like, that's gonna have everything in here. I felt like through the flow of the lesson plans, I wanted my kids to become more independent. So I wanted me not to be the only one saying, hey, before we read, let's take a peek and think of some words that we might see in this book. Or, after we read, let's retell the character setting problem solution. Or, something more complex, like let's talk about the character traits, right? I didn't want to be the only one doing that, because it's okay for me to lead those conversations and ask them questions. That's our job as the teacher. But when kids are off reading on their own, sometimes there can be such a divide, right? Between what we're doing in class or in our small group or in whole group and what they're actually doing as readers. And we need to kind of bridge that gap, right? Because it's great if they can do that stuff with us, but we aren't going to follow them around for their entire lives and their entire school career and help them think about character traits, right? Or help them use the nonfiction text features. Guided reading in the gradual release of responsibility is somewhere between whole group instruction or like modeled instruction and independent reading. So, our job is to get our kids to take what we're teaching them and apply it independently. And guided reading can help make that happen. But that does mean that there needs to be some level of independence of the kids during guided reading. And we can achieve that independence in a number of ways, right? Like, first of all, we can not do a preview of the book that's so long that it ruins all the surprises, right? And we cannot teach them all the hard words in the book. There needs to be work that's happening in guided reading. So we can make sure that they are doing that work. We can make sure that they're reading pretty much all of the text in each book. Sometimes choral reading, where everybody's reading together, can be a useful tool for part of a text, or if you have kids that you're trying to push into harder text, that can be a useful tool. But I would say like 90% of the time, maybe 85% of the time, my kids are just whisper reading or silent reading the text during guided reading. And the reason for that is because, again, I'm trying to bridge what I'm teaching my kids, like whole group instruction, some small group instruction, and independent reading. I want them to have some level of independence during guided reading. So, long story short, because I felt like I wanted to better facilitate their independence, I ended up creating these interactive guided reading mats. And so I'll show you one of these. Might be a little bit hard to see on the screen, so I'll just kind of read it to you. It says this is one for level G. So they're leveled just like everything else because, just makes it faster. And there's different strategies that you're working on at different levels. You can just pull the level you need and go. And there's different options at the different levels. There's not just one level GMAT or two level GMATs. There's multiple. And these are designed to work with pretty much any book. They really have nothing to do with my bundles. I personally, with my work, I feel like this is a good complement to what I'm already doing with my bundles. They can go together, but they can also be used completely separately. So the level G one, this is fiction. I have like a nonfiction and a fiction. This fiction, pretty much any book that you might grab, a level G, can work with this. So they're very flexible. So anyway, this says, before I read, I will make a prediction about the problem in the story. So I like this strategy, by the way, not to go too far down a rabbit hole. Not just make a prediction, but make a prediction about the problem in the story. So maybe the kids like look at the cover, read the title, take a little peek into the book, not a whole picture walk, but this gets their brain thinking, okay, this is fiction, there's going to be a problem. I need to read to find out what that is. So I like this because it's a little bit more specific than just make a prediction. But anyway, before I read, I will do that. While I read, I will continue to make predictions about what will happen next. So it's kind of like a continuation of the initial strategy. If I finish early, so along with independence, I wanted my kids to have something to do when they finish the book early. And often I will just tell them reread. Rereading is so great for fluency. I feel like we can't do it enough. I always feel like I need to do it more, but at the same time, sometimes I just want something different. Sometimes they get a little bit bored if I am, constantly asking them to reread the book. So this is kind of nice to throw in there because it gives them something to do that's flexible. So if I finish early, I'll make a list of silent E words from the text, and it shows them some examples, and then they can keep on going. So this is something very basic, but it's meaningful, something that can transition well into word work. It can even be, in some cases, your word work activity, right, for the kids that don't finish early. But then at the bottom here, it says, after we read, we will name the characters, setting, problem, and solution. So pretty basic, but this accomplishes some different things. Number one, it gives them visuals. This is especially important for ELLs or students with special needs, or just kids that are visual learners, right? Like we all have different preferences. I'm still learning about myself and learning that auditory is not real strong for me sometimes. I guess I'm very visual, and kids are the same too, right? Kids have different styles of learning. And so this gives them, every time they see this visual, because there's different mats, but every time they see that visual, they know what it is, right? Once they learn it. So that's one advantage of it. The other thing too is that when you give these to kids and you use them consistently so they know the flow of how the mat works, they begin to take charge, and you can encourage that and really praise that. And so maybe at the beginning of the lesson, you pass this out before you pass out the book, and then you pass out the book, and the kids, instead of you, are saying, hey, we got to make a prediction about the problem in the text. So again, with facilitating that gradual release of responsibility and getting them to be more independent, yes, it's a support, but it's also different than you being the only one saying, let's do this, let's do that, right? Like, they are using this as a support, but they're still the ones who are saying, let's use this strategy, and after we're done, let's do this. And you might even find that they're saying, hey, like this is pictured here and we can do that, but what about this other strategy? So the ideal is for them to learn this core set of strategies that they can then use with different fiction books, use with different nonfiction books, and of course apply to their own reading when we are not there with them. So that's why I decided to create these. And the nice thing is you literally just print them. You go over them with the kids at the beginning of the lesson, but it only takes a second, right? I do like to go over all of it with them. Maybe not the first time. Maybe the first time you introduce one, you just go over these two, and then later you go over this stuff. But once they know the format, it's consistent, they know what to do, you just put it in front of them, and it can really guide your planning because these strategies are level specific, but it can just kind of like guide the flow of the whole lesson. And of course, you'll add other things as needed, but they really are very flexible. You can put them, and I recommend doing this. Apparently, one of my little friends colored on this, and I didn't realize it, but this is a sheet protector, and so you can stick them in here. The kids can write on them and wipe off, so they're reusable. You can also, if you want, print them on fun paper as long as your kids can see everything okay. So lots of different options for that. I'll just show you a couple of different ones because, like, okay, this one, I have them from A through N, but this is like a level D one. Don't know how well you can see it, but these are actually Elkonin or sound boxes where they write the words with digraphs after they're finished. And of course, you have different strategies. This is a nonfiction one from level M, so you can kind of see the progression. Before I read, I will discuss what these words mean, and then you, as their teacher, you can write it on the whiteboard or write it for them. I prefer to just write on the whiteboard, and then they maybe copy a word or two. And so then they have the words here, you discuss what they mean, and then as they're reading, they know to look for those. While I read, I will stop, check my comprehension, and reread if I don't understand. That is a biggie because so many times kids are not paying attention to whether or not they're understanding the text. And so this strategy repeats itself several times throughout the mats. These strategies, or these mats rather, don't have 100% new strategies on every mat, but that's intentional because there's so many different strategies that we could teach, right? So many cool, helpful reading strategies. But what we most want for our kids is to master a core of really effective reading strategies, to fully master them so that they can use them on their own. So I try not to introduce 4 million strategies, right? I would rather introduce fewer strategies, see them pop up in multiple mats, multiple lessons, so that the kids can actually learn them fully and apply them. So that's a big strategy that we work on. If I finish early, I will make a list of the 4 most important vocabulary words in the text, so they write the word and what they think it means. And then after we read, we will retell information from the text and discuss how the text is organized. So that's kind of the progression. And I do have ones that are a little bit lower and a tiny bit higher because I have up through level N, but hopefully that gives you a sense of what's in the mats. So I think I've been missing some questions. Let me scroll through and see. Okay, so Olivia says if you're using AR levels, should you level them to Fountas Pinnell levels? So Olivia, I do not know the AR levels. There is, if you just type into Google, learning A to Z correlation chart, I don't know if the AR levels are on there. but I would look for a correlation chart if you're trying to figure out which levels are where. Shannon, I haven't done like a research study or anything, but I have been using these for multiple years and I absolutely have seen growth for sure. Cindy says, got the pre-A and A through D bundles, really liked them. Now she's in first and could use the higher levels. Awesome. Stacy says, kids will do anything if you give them whiteboard markers. So true. Thank you, Jennifer. Hey, Lillian, thanks for joining me. All right. Well, I think that's all I have to show you for our show and tell. I hope that it was helpful. If you happen to be joining me later, you can always, so hopefully this is recording and it'll save to my Facebook page as long as everything went well, but you can always go back and rewatch the beginning. But just to review, I have my weekly binder where my plans go, blank running records, blank checklists, just everything I need for the week. I clean it out every Thursday or when I'm planning. Then I have this that's separate because this is where the masters of all my stuff, all the books, all the lesson plans I've already written, because why reinvent the wheel? Why not just adapt the wheel to your different kids? Word work activities, all kind of fun stuff goes here. After I have made like little sets of word work activities, I do have plastic drawers where those cut apart sets can go. One other option I've seen on Amazon, speaking of Amazon, we're going to do the gift card giveaway in a second. There are these little plastic pouches that can go into binders, which is kind of nice. I do like to keep one in my guided reading binder as long as there's not too much stuff that I need for my kids. Like this, for example, in here I have a word work activity we were doing. Okay, so like the kids were writing. So like we were working on THR, I guess, and digraph blend. So they were writing thread, strawberry. They were using pictures and writing initial digraph blend. So that is something that I would just put these on the table, right? So at the end of our guided reading lesson, they wouldn't have this on here. We didn't erase them for some reason, but I would just pass them out. The kids would pick one that they wanted to use, fill it out. And this is nice because it's kind of open-ended. And if you've just got a couple of minutes for word work, it's very fast. So anyway, like I would have this in a baggie, which would be labeled. And then when I'm planning my lessons, I can put it in here and put it in my binder. I like to keep as much in the binder as possible, just for easy access. Alrighty, let's see if I missed any other questions. Okay, so Sue says, do you use your mats for the child to take home to finish after they read the book? So I don't necessarily like, I have my mats and I reuse them because I put them in page protectors, but what I do like to do is after we've used one for a while and they're pretty familiar with it, I like to let them use it, them take it and keep it. And so that could mean independent reading. It could be something that you send home. Maybe if you're quarantined for Corona, you can send one of these home with your kids. Just make sure that they know how to use it. And then this can guide the conversation with their parents too, because these things are they're pretty straightforward, right? Like it depends on the level, but parents sometimes don't know what to do when they're reading a book with their child. And so maybe this can kind of guide them in what they do before they read, while they read, and after they read. So this could also be a parent support as well, because I know I'm always getting questions about like what can I do to help parents with reading at home. And I think that this could provide some just support for parents who are wanting to do that. Claudia, were you asking about the name of my interactive guided reading mats? They're just called interactive guided reading mats, and there's a little link in this post where you can see where they're on sale through Monday. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. It says, love your products. They're so detailed. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and do our Amazon gift card giveaway. So if you are thinking about setting up binders, highly recommend, or getting some pouches or something like that, or you just need something different for yourself, I would love to give you a gift card. So let's have everybody answer a question and then I will scroll and I'll just randomly pick a name. So my question that I want you to answer is, how many small groups, and it doesn't just have to be guided reading, it could be, small group phonics instruction, any kind of small group reading instruction, but how many small groups do you see per day? Go ahead and type that in the comments. Hey, Jackie, no worries. If I know you missed some of it, but it'll be posted to my page later so you can watch the beginning, and you just got here in time for the gift card giveaway. Kathy says, such a great parent support. Parents would love a simple guideline. Yeah, it can be hard to communicate with parents about what they can be doing with their kiddos. All right, so everybody should be typing how many reading small groups they see per day, and then I will scroll from those comments and pick a winner. Awesome, Claudia. Just want to give you guys a couple of minutes to type that in, and then I'll pull my winner. I'm just gonna scroll up and see if I noticed any other questions. Not seeing any. I see anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5. 3, 4 on a good day. Yeah, I know, me too. Sometimes some days are better than others. Sometimes that last group we don't quite make it there. Alrighty, I'm just gonna load these and pick my winner. So if you are my winner, what I'm gonna need you to do is email me and just let me know like what email address is good for sending the Amazon gift card because it's digital. I'm gonna drop my email address in the chat here, but it's Alison, ALISON, at learningattheprimarypond.com. So if you're my winner, that's what you would email. Okay, just gonna look away and randomly choose somebody. All right, my winner is Macy Mayer. Hopefully I said your name correctly, but it's M-A-C-E-Y. I'll give you a little heart there so you know it's you. Macy, go ahead and email me. You are my Amazon gift card winner. Hope you buy something fun with it. So that just about wraps it up. If you think of any questions, feel free to come and comment on this thread. If you attended my webinars this past week, thank you so much for being there. I had a lot of fun chatting with you about guided reading, and I hope it gave you some things that you can implement this week or next week or the following week. But I'm always here if you got questions, so feel free to leave them, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Claudia. Thanks, Jackie. Feel free to leave any questions if you have them. Bye, guys.